Welcome to Moving Panels One Shot. Let's have a nerdy little conversation. And today I've got my friend Chad Smith here, and we are going to talk about just a really fun comic book. So today, well, not today, but this month, we have been talking about anniversaries, and this comic just screamed at me that it needs to be done this year at this time. So we're talking about Superman number 300, which was released in June of 1976. Big anniversary there. 45 years ago, this comic book was released. And it talks about what if, instead of Superman arriving in the, I guess, 30s or 40s, whatever they were going to say is when he originally arrived, what if he arrived in 1976? And then when he grew up, it would be the year into the future, 2001, which was now 20 years ago for us. So I just thought this one was great, and I got Chad to join me on this. We've both reread the comic, and we're going to let you know what we think. So, but let me first officially welcome Chad. Thank you for joining me, Chad.
Yeah, thanks for asking me to read this really long book. I mean, they even cut the letters from fans out of the end of it to get all 30 pages of.
How much did you love the fruit pie ad at the beginning with the Joker?
Yeah, it's super funny.
Absolutely love that. So let's talk about it. So this was the 300th episode or 300th issue of the Superman comic. And so they wanted to make this big thing about it. So it was titled Superman 2001.
Yeah, it's pretty hilarious what they thought the future was going to be, but I'm sure we'll get into that. The cover's great, though. I do like the very typical Superman hands-on hips pose, and you get this like bottom corner of Jor-El like kind of waving goodbye to the spacecraft as it leaves exploding Krypton, which in both this version and the Superman's normal origin story, which I think this is one of the few things that is similar between the two, I don't understand why Krypton always explodes. Like, what is causing Krypton to not just like burn up in its sun or anything? It explodes.
It explodes. Yeah, completely disintegrate. Well, if it didn't explode, we wouldn't have kryptonite. So we gotta have kryptonite to get everybody involved. So you don't have to go out and read this. I'm going to give you a brief synopsis of what happens in this. So I'm going to read this straight from where I wrote it here in my notes. What if baby Kal-El landed on Earth in 1976? Found by the American military just ahead of the Soviets, Kal-El is raised as a ward of the Army. Tensions over the alien superhuman, now called Skyboy, we will definitely get into that, boil over in 1990, with both the US and the USSR launching missiles. Skyboy destroys all of the weapons and abandons his Skyboy identity to live as Clark Kent in 2001. Well, excuse me, to live as Clark Kent until 2001, when an unnamed villainous group who orchestrated World War III back in 1990 sends a dude named Mocha to Times Square to declare himself the person who saved the planet in 1990 and declares himself the rightful ruler of mankind. But Clark comes out of retirement, names himself Superman, and exposes Mocha for the fraud he is. And that is exactly what happens in this comic book.
Yeah. There's a lot to pick apart here.
So this isn't a reboot, even though it is kind of an origin. It's not a reboot. This is a imaginary story. You could probably throw it in the world of, the Elseworld kind of comics and whatnot, even though it doesn't even hold to that. But I'll get into that a little bit later. But this was it was a one shot. It was just a fun little thing they decided to do. And so let's kind of break down this. And I've got to start with the fact that how come him arriving in 1976 changes the location as Rocket lands?
Well, I mean, obviously the time would make a difference, Laramy, because as Earth moves through space, I'm totally joking. It doesn't make much sense. There's a lot of baby Kal-El getting to Earth that doesn't make much sense in this continuity-wise, whatever you want to call it. I was kind of surprised. I had to look at the authors or the writers on this one because I was curious. Was it, somebody who was famous in the Superman world? And the two guys who wrote it, Cary Bates and Elliot S. Maggin, Maggin did not work on Superman very much at all. He was only...
Shocking.
Yeah, he was only at DC for a few years before he went to Marvel to write The Hulk and some other titles. But Cary Bates did like 600 and something titles in DC. Or books, not titles, sorry. So, this is his realm, and he had been writing for DC already. So I'm kind of surprised. But I guess they were just allowed to play real fast and loose with the Superman myth and world, and it starts... Like you were saying, right at the beginning, the rocket lands in a very bizarre in the ocean. I guess that's just because I guess that's just handy because you needed both the Soviets and the U.S. Navy to be able to vie for him, kind of thing. And
you literally see you see the rocket and boats on both sides converging perfectly timed together.
I love how it's a red helicopter and a blue helicopter, like it's G.I. Joe, like it's that. Descriptive of just the artwork.
Gotta distinguish the good guys from the bad guys.
And I do love the 70s art, and I don't mean that in hyperbole or any kind of irony. I actually love the helicopter crash scene because the one survivor is Kent, and he's being thrown from the helicopter. And he actually, as he's thrown from the helicopter, you see the arc of his fall through 3 panels to the bottom panel when he's actually lands in the water kind of stuff. And it's just very 70s, and it's pretty, I actually kind of like that stuff.
Well, the guy who finds the rocket is Thomas Clark.
Oh man, it's General Kent. You're right.
Yeah, General Kent comes in later.
Yeah. Sorry,
so,
but
everyone listening, you now figure out where does he get the name Clark Kent if he's not found by the Kents.
Yep.
Yeah. So he's found by Lieutenant Thomas Clark, and one of the great talking about the writing where it's I claimed it before any
Oh yeah,
so he tells you exactly what he did.
So this is plot point number 1 that I'll maybe have a little bit of issue with. Apparently, this was a plant a flag in it and it's yours situation because the U.S. Navy just got there first, so the rocket belongs to us. Stick my tongue out.
And you just expect the Russians to go, oh, dang it.
We lost fair and square.
Finders keepers.
So, it's pretty funny. And then they take him to this laboratory, or you don't see any of that. The next shot is just them in a lab in which they use
this maximum security compound.
In which they use a super laser, with quotation fingers, super laser.
A laser.
And they can't cut through the rocket ship. And
I just want to point out, Chad and I both are using finger quotes as we're saying the word laser.
But it's so funny. They can't cut through it, and you get this terrible dialogue of wait, this will cut through concrete. Why won't it cut through this rocket and everything? And then the door of the rocket starts to open. Nobody thinks let's turn this off.
Yeah.
And so it's just hitting the baby in the face.
In the face. Square in the face. Baby comes out. There's just a panel of the laser hitting it in the face.
It's so great.
And they don't panic either. They just go, the laser's not affecting the baby.
It's so awesome. And then the baby starts speaking 12 different languages.
Which made no sense.
Baby Kal-El, I didn't know that was one of the things. Apparently, this was just a longer space flight. Maybe he orbited the sun for a few years more before landing this time or something, because he had plenty of time to learn all of Earth's languages. Pops out and immediately is hungry and flies. Right off the bat, just flies out of the rocket through a wall.
Which they also comment on how strong the walls are.
Yep. It's so funny, man. What was the next?
Then he finds a turkey, and they tell him it's not cooked. And so he roasts it just by looking at it.
which is how you find that they see that he has heat vision.
Yeah.
But all of the things you just said make no sense. This is an alien baby who A, knows what a turkey is, B, understands that it's not cooked. Like, and you know what I mean? Like, there's nothing here that makes any sense past the most casual reading, but it's so funny.
Yeah, Jor-El's little crystals that he's teaching him on the way there were very thorough. And then immediately they put him in the Superman suit as a child.
Which they had to have him make.
Yeah. And they explain it away about, well, my thing was they talk about they created it under specifications. And again, I'm using the air quotes again.
Yeah.
Like, what specifications? Like, what gave you these specifications? How did you know what you needed to make? And then they made it out of a fabric that would stretch as he grew, to explain how he just is in the same costume the entire time, from being a toddler now to then being I guess you would say a 25, 27-year-old, whatever, depending on the age he was when he landed.
Kryptonian spandex, man. It's miracle stuff.
And then let's talk about what they then talk about, the S, because he is codename Skyboy.
Which is a little problematic, since that character already exists.
Yeah. So to explain what Chad's talking about, 20 years earlier almost, in World's Finest number 92 in 1958, Superman, Batman, and Robin actually discover a ship from another world that contains a young boy, and the boy has powers similar to Superman, and Superman calls him Skyboy. Now, of course, they do later in that storyline find out that he is an alien named Tham, and he's from a planet called Cormo. But like Chad said, canonically, there already was a Skyboy. So why use the name Skyboy here? I don't know. Why don't you just immediately go to Superboy? I mean...
Yeah, that was kind of my thought. Superboy would have worked just fine. But why did he put an S on his chest at all? Like, again, this is the mysterious specifications.
Top secret. Yeah.
But
top
whatever.
Secret. We don't want anybody to know who he is, but let's just put a big old S on his chest.
So again, I mean, we're being very critical about a 30-page comic book from 45 years ago. So, I mean...
Is it 30 pages? It felt like 10.
But just in having fun with it or whatever. The other thing that in the myth doesn't make sense to me is he's in this like top secret laboratory that they kind of, it's supposed to be like NORAD. You get the feeling like it's in a mountain complex somewhere sort of thing. He hasn't been exposed to Earth's sun yet. Like, how's he?
I didn't even think about that.
How's he doing any of this? Like,
yeah, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, he's hidden away until he's hidden away for what is it, 1990? So 24 years, or not 24 years, 14 years.
Yeah.
14 years.
14 years.
I'm a math teacher and I couldn't figure that out. Yeah.
I'm just meaning from the time that they rescue him till he comes out of the rocket. Because the first thing he does is take a super laser to the face. Then he flies around looking for food.
And then heats it up with his heat vision, which is supposed to be the solar energy escaping his body.
So, I mean, obviously, like, we're being very critical about a very, very simple and silly one-off, but I just thought it was all kind of funny.
Well, let's start getting into it. Then jumps into the quote-unquote world of tomorrow, 1990, which is where they jump first. I couldn't help but notice that as soon as it jumps to 1990, we get this panoramic shot. The White House is underneath a dome.
So you have, what was it? New Empire State Building, which is 1 mile tall, apparently.
Yeah.
The New York skyline. Apparently we've knocked all of New York down because it doesn't look like New York at all. You have the UN building. That's it. And then the White House is under a dome, which is never spoken of again.
No,
there was no reason
to explain why. Yeah.
There's no reason that it's under an impenetrable dome. Like that was kind of interesting.
Well, and then you have, what is it? New York, Massachusetts, all the way down to yeah. It was like all of these cities, New York, Boston, all
Philadelphia,
they've all merged together
to become Metropolis.
Yeah.
So now Metropolis isn't a city, that doesn't really exist.
It's a fifth of the United States.
It's just the eastern seaboard. Yeah.
We didn't mention that Skyboy's handler is General Garrett Kent. I know we kind of threw his name out earlier, but just to throw that back out. So we got Thomas Clark rescues him. Garrett Kent is the general who is in charge of him, kind of his guardian. But back to 1990, I will say they were very progressive. There is a woman president.
Were they progressive, though? Because what's her name?
Yeah, that's right. President Wiener. Her name was President Wiener.
Oh, man. I was like, really, guys? I feel like a lot of drinking went into making this this particular comic book. I'm just saying.
Hey, look. I got an idea. So we're then introduced to the unnamed villains, who are just these two dudes in a room looking at everything on a big screen.
A very big screen, yeah.
Yeah. The only identifiable name they get is they are a third world power, but they're not the U.S., they're not the USSR, because they want to pit those two against each other and start World War III.
I feel like this is just a Bond villain.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, seriously, like the ridiculous costumes, the super oversized TV he's looking at, and the whole thing about like somehow convincing the world powers to destroy each other to gain world domination.
Well, and here was my problem too, is why couldn't that have been some version of Lex Luthor?
Sure.
Like that's one of my biggest problems with this is, other than Superman, there's no other characters in this story. We don't have the Kents. We don't have Lois. We don't have Jimmy. We don't have Lex Luthor. We don't have Perry White. We don't have anybody else. So again, that's one, and I go back to talking about it's a failed attempt even at an Elseworld story because there's nobody else.
Yeah. Which, I mean, on one hand kind of makes sense. Like, how do you tie a lot of those characters? It doesn't make sense if they're in it at this point. But I do agree with you that at least on the villain scape of things, like maybe try to find somebody that you could make a half decent story for instead of two unnamed dudes who have the worst plan of all time. So it doesn't make a lot of sense.
So they, I guess through some meme of computer programming, they make the USSR believe that US has launched a missile, and they make the US believe that the USSR has launched a missile, which causes them to actually launch a missile. And Skyboy doesn't want to see it happen. And so he goes and catches the missiles. And how does he do that? Oh, with the strongest rope he could find. An
unbreakable lasso.
Yeah, a lasso.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering where he got that from.
Yeah. Maybe that hidden bunker was on this mysterious island.
Yeah.
So, but he removes all of the weapons of mass destruction. Here was my thing. And then all of a sudden there's this random gas cloud over California.
Yep. So I do want to point out that he didn't get rid of all the missiles that way. He just flew over the ocean to let the ones coming from U.S. submarines hit him in the stomach.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that was my other favorite part, is just, I'm not really sure how that defeats it, but sure, whatever.
Yeah, and then all the ones he catches with a lasso, he just, it was Superman 4. He takes them, puts them, and he slings them into the sun.
But you're right. Then the next danger is a mysterious gas cloud, which apparently, despite being used in real human warfare since World War I, is a modern marvel. Like, the authors make it out like this is one of the treacherous modern weapons of the world, and you're like, nah, they've been doing that a while. Like, so I thought that was kind of interesting.
So he ends World War III. The USA and the USSR just kind of go, oh, we're so sorry. let's make a treaty. And they agree to make peace. And then we get this random narrative of this is why I wanted to bring up General Kent.
For
General
the listener,
Kent,
hang on, just right before you go forward, just for the listener, the way that Superman resolves the gas cloud is just makes a tornado. He flies around it really fast. Mm-hmm. That's how that's ended. So so there's that.
That's how the Flash has done it for like 80 years. So why couldn't he? But then we get this just random narrative box that tells us that General Kent has died of a heart attack from the stress of the war.
Yep, as generals are prone to do, you know.
Yeah. and then at the funeral, Skyboy, who is in normal clothes, now looking like Clark Kent, has decided that he doesn't want to be Skyboy anymore. He just wants to be a normal person, and he gives himself a name based off of his two quote-unquote fathers, I guess you would say. And so he takes Thomas Clark and Kent Garrett and gets Clark Kent. So let me make this clear. He uses the last name to make his first name, and he uses a first name, because I said that wrong earlier. I said Garrett Kent. His name's Kent Garrett. He uses a first name to make his last name. Okay, sure.
So that's not my only problem with this particular scene. It's implied that he's been called nothing but Skyboy for the first 14 years he's been around humans. And I also want to point out that his dad apparently took great effort to teach him all the languages and foods of Earth people, but didn't include a video that went, by the way, your name is Kal-El. And a boy that can speak, fly, communicate that he's hungry. He didn't just tell the humans, no, my name's Kal-El. You could call me that, not Skyboy. Like, you know, I don't know. It's just kind of funny.
So we then jump into the distant future of 2001. It is New Year's Eve 2000, going into 2001. And the world is very futuristic. I mean, their televisions are called Trivision, which are just these giant screens again. While people are sitting in their floating recliners. Mm-hmm. And again, we got Stratojets, whatever those are. I don't know because they never show us one. We have no idea what's the difference between an airplane and a Stratojet.
If you've seen the Jetsons, you understand what this version of 2001 looks like.
That's exactly what it looks like. Clark is a reporter, but he's a news anchor for the Trivision planet-wide news. Why again they don't use Daily Planet again in kind of like a Elseworld type way? Give it something. But now we are introduced to Mocha. Not like the drink. This is Moka. Mocha, who is this 4-armed alien who shows up on Times Square New Year's Eve right before the year 2000 comes in, and he says, "I'm the one who saved you in 1990." I'm sure some people are not just going, 1990, like 10 years ago? That was 10 years ago, dude. Like, what'd you wait on?
Apparently not.
You shall now bow before me.
And they all agree to.
Immediately. They just immediately. Like, oh, yes, he's the one who saved us. He is our true leader, which I think is an exact bubble out of one of the...
It's not far off, yeah. Which I would like to point out, this is what Clark is angry about and convinces him to become Superman.
Yeah, it's someone else takes credit.
Mocha doesn't do anything. He doesn't start like some tyrannical reign. He just takes credit for what Skyboy did 10 years ago. And Clark's like, oh, no, we're not.
I can't. No. And then we get the line that Clark says. So I didn't mention this in 1990 when he gives up, he takes the Superman, Skyboy, whatever you want to call it, costume, puts it in his briefcase, and then just throws it off a cliff. And now it's New Year's Eve 2000, so 10 years later. He dives into the water. The fact that suitcase would be in that exact spot.
Yeah. It didn't go anywhere. Oh,
Didn't move.
there's no tides or anything in the ocean you got to worry
no
about.
shift of the sand. I mean, we're not talking a really heavy object here, but he dives in. He apparently changes clothes underwater.
Yep.
And then he says, and I have this line, I must stop being, I can't hide as an ordinary man. I must be a Superman.
Yep. Yeah, that's how he's named, Superman.
Now, help me out here, Chad. I didn't mark it down. I don't have it in front of me to look real quick. When does he ever let anyone know his name is Superman?
I didn't think about that, but never. He never.
But yet they call him Superman.
Yep.
At the end of the comic. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, then he shows up to Times Square. I mean, I'm not gonna go in too far of this. He fights Mocha. The people are upset that he's showing up and all of a sudden fighting their true leader,
their savior.
Their savior.
He's fighting our savior.
What is he doing?
Yeah.
And then what fixes it? Well, Superman hits him so hard he reveals that he was a robot the entire time.
Yep.
And that's all people needed to go, oh, he was a liar.
It's a super lackluster fight. Like there's
definitely very anticlimactic.
Yeah.
There's nothing to it. So yeah, pretty much what we just told you, that's all there is. There's nothing, there's no like grand battle. They just punch a little bit and it's over. And then as gullible and at what you would say the human race is at this point, you know, they so easily said, oh yeah, Mocha is our leader. Well, then Superman beats Mocha and they go, nope, it's now Superman. Let's build an idol to Superman.
Yeah.
So they just build a statue.
And then you have the weird, apparently Clark Kent, when he decides to put all his energy into television into being a reporter instead of being Superman part-time, is a very good, because he's like the Ted Koppel, like Dan Rather of this elsewhere world, because he's apparently the boss, and one of his underlings at the TV station, the Trivision station, is asking him, like, do you think Superman's gone for good? Which, why? Like, why would he be gone for good? None of any of these questions make any sense. And Clark just kind of replies, I'm sure if we need him, he'll come back.
Okay, so I wrote this down too. This is the exact words. That is the final line of the comic book. So, yeah, the boy is asking Clark, and again, Clark Kent, they're looking at the statue, and he goes, you ever think Superman's going to come back again? And this is the exact final line of the comic. The world is on a pretty steady course these days, but if it's unfortunate enough to need a hero again, I'm sure he will return.
Yeah.
And then, you can definitely tell this was written in 1970s for them to say, the world is on a pretty steady course right now.
Yeah, for real. It's a very interesting comic book. I mean, they were hopeful, at least. They thought that, you know, by 2001, we'd have it together.
Other than we'll just, you know, throw hero worship at anyone who asks for it.
Yeah, it'd be incredibly gullible. Yeah.
Yeah. I am your leader. Okay.
A four-armed dude. Like,
yeah, just shows up. Yeah. And apparently in 2000 or going into 2001, entertainment hasn't reached a point where some people would have gone, oh, hey, is this like some sort of show? Or are they putting on some sort of event? Nope. Just, bow down to Mocha. A little prophetic, though. Bow down to Mocha. I mean, a lot of people can't live without their coffee.
Nice.
So here's my question. And this is kind of where I want to end things, unless you've got more to talk about. Why was this story told? Like, it didn't serve any purpose. It's not a good what if story. I mean, it's not like Red Sun where it really makes you go, ooh, you know, that could have been weird if he had landed here instead of here. Like,
there's not even a good moral to it.
No.
It doesn't teach you anything. It totally blows apart the normal mythology of Superman. I mean, it does. I don't understand how it adds anything. I don't understand how it's a great issue 300.
It was kind of a disgrace to be issue 300.
Yeah, it's a very strange one-off, as I think you can tell both of us have just had. I mean, it's a good read if you just want to really laugh at some crazy old art, but man.
Yeah, there's really nothing more to say. That's really
I really want to deep dive on this third world power who we don't at all
never find out anything.
We don't find out who they are. We don't find out, like, they're just disappointed when their nuclear missile plan doesn't work out. Then they somehow get their hands on super advanced android technology and try to take over the planet that way. And when that doesn't work out, like, they're just bummed again. We don't really get any kind of reaction. It's just that didn't work out.
Yeah. So Superman doesn't find out who they are and brings them to justice. No, they're just like, we'll get you again, Superman. And you won't, because we'll never hear from you again.
Yeah. This is the Scooby-Doo of Superman comic books. No, they actually find the villain in Scooby-Doo most of the time. So, yeah. Even that doesn't make sense. No, it's hilarious.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's the thing. Because even Red Sun, it ties in all the other characters. They've done Elseworld stories where it reveals that, because of this event, it caused this, which then led to that. Even at the end, they just kind of do a quick little, let me show you how this all connects to the DC universe that we're writing. But this one doesn't. It just goes, all right, story over. See y'all later. Bye-bye.
It doesn't even play by the rules of the character. Like, it's the whole thing's crazy. It's a fun read, though. I mean,
I will point out that later, I didn't put a date, but later after, obviously, Crisis on Infinite Earths, DC released a compendium and actually put this in as a multiverse story and said it happened on Earth 300. So, so on Earth 300, this is actually the way things played out. But hopefully it was one of the Earths that disappeared when Crisis on Infinite Earths occurred. All right. So any last thoughts, Chad? I think we've pretty much laid it all out there, how we feel about this issue.
I'm pretty okay with this particular Earth having disappeared. I mean, I wouldn't say that about a lot of worlds, but this one can go away.
Yeah. But again, this was it was perfect for this exact time. We're releasing this in June of 2021, which puts the issue exactly 45 years ago. I don't know about to the day, but it was June of 1976. Then 25 years later is supposed to be where the end of it takes place, which for us was actually 20 years in the past. So it was just a real fun one to kind of fit in here and kind of end our June, where we've been hitting a bunch of anniversaries with the Greatest American Heroes 40th anniversary, the beginning of the series for Loki, the 30th anniversary of The Rocketeer, and now this 45th anniversary of Superman 300, titled Superman 2001, which was 20 years ago for us, and what the future looked like to people from 45 years ago. And that's going to get real confusing the more I talk about it.
I would like to point out that 2000 was the year that you and I met. So that works out too.
Oh, yeah. So. It was.
Oh, man.
We're old. Okay. So thanks everybody for listening. Please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and get this show noticed and out there for people to see it. Follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. We are at Moving Panels. You can leave us a message at movingpanels@gmail.com. And just keep listening. Listen back to those old episodes and let's keep going. We're ever so close. We got 2 more months and we have done this for a year, and it's boggled my mind. Something that I decided to start during the pandemic of 2020, and had a lot of fun with it. It's actually like me and Chad talking about knowing each other for over 20 years, and even though we did talk on a regular basis, this has allowed us more opportunities to talk with each other and it's just been fun. So, and I thank this podcast for doing that, and hopefully it can continue to do that. And I thank Chad for always being willing to help me.
Oh yeah, man, anytime.
All right, for Moving Panels, I'm Laramy Wells. I'll see you on the other side of the page.
Hello, movie viewers and fellow movie lovers. My name is Tim Williams, and I'm the creator and host of Movie Views Presents the 80s Flick Flashback Podcast. See, I love the 80s, and I have a great appreciation and nostalgic passion for the classic 80s flicks that birthed my love for movies and ultimately helped shape my childhood. On each episode, I'll discuss, with a special guest co-host of course, a different film from the 1980s. We'll share memories, favorite characters, iconic scenes, and even share some behind-the-scenes stories along the way. We'll discuss famous blockbusters like Raiders of the Lost Ark, Coming to America, Ghostbusters, Dirty Dancing, Top Gun, Die Hard, and many, many more. As well as some other cult classics and even lesser-known flicks we discovered on cable TV or the now-defunct video rental stores. Remember those? No matter what 80s flick we choose to talk about, we'll always have a good time, so come and check us out. You can find the 80s Flick Flashback Podcast on major podcasting platforms like Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Anchor, and more. Be sure to subscribe or follow so you don't miss a single episode. Once again, I'm Tim Williams, and I hope you'll join me for the next 80s Flick Flashback.